ABC News, and I welcome you to the final 2020 presidential debate between President Donald J. Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. Tonight's debate is sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. It is conducted under health and safety protocols designed by the Commission's health security advisor. The audience here in the hall has promised to remain
Hey guys,
silent.
welcome to another episode of The Kids Are Gone. I'm RJ.
And I'm Amanda.
We're doing it a little bit different this time because the last time the debate was on, I almost lost my head. So we're going to actually do this as a recording and repost the debate on our YouTube page. It's going to be a slight delay on the video feed, but you can follow the video feed with subtitles, but you'll hear the audio, and the audio will be sped up just a little bit, just so we don't get dinged by YouTube. And here we go.
And I do want to say a very good evening to both of you.
This is about to be so much fun.
Oh, this is about to be a blasty blast.
At the beginning of each section, each candidate will have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you, baby.
To answer my first question. The debate commission will then turn on their
Careful.
microphone only when it is their turn to answer, and the commission will turn it off exactly
Look at
when
Joe's
2 minutes have
smile.
expired.
I know. He's like, this is about to be great. Joe Biden smile.
Because they just said that they were going to mute the mics until it's their turn to answer.
Because last time was a cluster. It's an absolute cluster.
And so with that, if you're ready, let's start, and we will begin.
Is going to distribute the vaccine. I can tell you from personal experience that I was in the hospital, I had it, and I got better, and I will tell you that I had something that they gave me, a therapeutic, I guess they would call it. Some people could say it was a cure, but I was in for a short period of time, and I got better very fast.
Stay composed, Joe. Stay composed.
I'm immune. Whether it's 4 months or a lifetime, nobody's been able to say that, but I'm immune. More and more people are getting better.
There's no immunity to it. It's been able to go back to people who've had it previously.
But I've been congratulated by the heads of many countries on what we've been able to do. If you take a look at what we've done in terms of goggles and masks and gowns and everything else, and in particular ventilators, we're now making ventilators all over the world, thousands and thousands a month, distributing them all over the world. It will go away, and as I say, we're rounding the turn, we're rounding the corner. It's going away.
Okay, former Vice President Biden, to you, how would you lead the country out of this crisis? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
220,000 Americans dead. You hear nothing else I say tonight. Hear this. Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially. Anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America. We're in a situation where there are 1,000 deaths a day now, 1,000 deaths a day, and there are over 70,000 new cases per day. Compared to what's going on in Europe, as the New England Medical Journal said, they're starting from a very low rate. We're starting from a very high rate. The expectation is we'll have another 200,000 Americans dead between now and the end of the year. If we just wore these masks, the president's own advisors have told him, we could save 100,000 lives. And we're in a circumstance where the president thus far still has no plan, no comprehensive plan. What I would do is make sure we have everyone encouraged to wear a mask all the time. I would make sure we move in the direction of rapid testing, investing in rapid testing. I would make sure that we set up national standards as to how to open up schools and open up businesses so they can be safe, and give them the wherewithal to
Being quiet for this long?
to do that. We're in a situation now where the New England Medical Journal, one of the most serious journals in the whole world, said for the first time ever that the way this president has responded to this crisis has been absolutely tragic. And so, folks, I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan.
President Trump, I'd like to follow up with you in your comments. You talked about taking a therapeutic. I assume you're referencing Regeneron. You also said a vaccine will be coming within weeks.
Yes.
Is that a guarantee?
No, it's not a guarantee, but it will be by the end of the year. But I think it has a good chance. There are two companies, I think, within a matter
That's
of weeks.
not weeks.
And it will
I mean,
be
I guess
distributed very
technically
quickly.
Can you tell us which companies?
Johnson & Johnson is
like
doing very
weeks, you
well.
think less than a
Moderna is
month.
doing very well. Pfizer is doing very well. And we have numerous others. But then we also have others that we're working on very closely with other countries, in particular Europe.
Let me follow up with you, because this is new information. You have said a vaccine is coming soon, within weeks now. Your own officials say it could take well into 2021 at the earliest for enough Americans to get vaccinated. And even then, they say the country will be wearing masks and distancing into 2022. Is your timeline realistic?
No, I think my timeline is going to be more accurate. I don't know that they're counting on the military the way I do, but we have our generals lined up. One in particular, that's the head of logistics.
He's saying
and
that
this
his
is a very
timeline
easy
is more
distribution for him.
accurate.
He's
Than
going
the
to
scientists.
vaccine.
Well, yeah, it's because science doesn't know.
100 million
He knows.
vials as soon as we have the vaccine.
Science doesn't know anything.
Vice President Biden, your reaction, and just 40% of Americans say they would definitely agree to take a coronavirus vaccine if it was approved by the government. What steps would you take to give Americans confidence in a vaccine if it were approved?
Make sure it's totally transparent. Have the scientists of the world see it, know it, look at it, go through all the processes. And by the way, this is the same fellow who told you this is going to end by Easter last time. This is the same fellow who told you that, don't worry, we're going to end this by the summer. We're about to go into a dark winter. And he has no clear plan, and there's no prospect that there's going to be a vaccine available for the majority of the American people before the middle of next year.
President Trump, your reaction, he says you
I don't
have no
think we're
plan.
going to have a dark winter at all. We're opening up our country. We've learned and studied and understand the disease, which we didn't at the beginning. When I closed and banned China from coming in heavily infected, and then ultimately Europe. But China was in January. Months later, he was saying I was xenophobic. I did it too soon.
I mean, even if it was, so let's because that's a talking point. It's a jab. Okay.
And frankly,
What did you do to stop it once you realized it was here? You knew it was a problem months before.
And didn't say shit.
Yeah, because you didn't want to tank the economy.
Had that had this kind of
Like, you can keep blaming. All this is for him is a blame game. Who can I pin this on so that way it doesn't look bad to me? Which, that's not what a leader does. My biggest problem with President Donald Trump, it's not how he gamed the system, because everybody games the system. I understand that. As a matter of fact, I get it. What I have an issue with is that people are allowing what we've always valued as strong leadership to go by the wayside with him.
But he was way behind us.
Vice President Biden,
Morally, ethically, the ability to be able to take responsibility for my actions.
From China.
Real leaders.
40 countries had already done that. In addition to that, what he did, he made sure that we had 44 people that were in there in China trying to get to Wuhan to determine what exactly the source was. What did the
But if you
president say in
actually
January?
look at
He said
leadership
no. He
in
said
our
this is,
country,
he's being
how
transparent.
many
The
politicians
president
do you
of
see
China is
actually
being
take
transparent. We owe him a debt of
responsibility for
gratitude.
something they
We
did
have to thank
unless
him.
it was
then
plastered
what
all
happened
over the
was
internet?
And where they kind of had no choice but to say they're dead wrong. I guess that's fair. So that's a really good talking point. Do you think that though we kind of look at them like leaders, that they're not leadership positions?
And he talks about
No.
don't worry.
That's the
So
thing that's
it'll be over
always
soon.
kind of pissed
Come
me
on.
off about
There's
how
not another serious
this has
scientist in the
become.
world who thinks it's going to be over soon.
President Trump,
They're-
your reaction?
they're not
Over
sup-
soon. I
they're
say
not
we're learning
supposed to
live with
be
it.
our
We have no
leaders.
choice. We can't lock
They're
ourselves
supposed
up in a
to be-
basement like Joe does. He has the,
They're supposed
he
to be
has
public
the ability
servants.
to lock
Yeah.
himself
They're
up.
supposed
I
to
don't
work
know. He's
for
obviously
us.
made a lot
Yeah.
of money someplace.
And not
He has
making
this
more than
big
half of their
company in the
constituents,
basement.
if
You
not
can't do
more
that.
than
By the
three-quarters
way,
of their
I, as the president,
constituents.
couldn't do that.
I
I'd have
respect
to put
that.
myself in the basement or in a beautiful room in the White House
You
and
shouldn't
go
be
away for a
afraid
year and a
to
half
tell
until
the
it disappears.
president
I can't do
to
that.
his
And
face
listen,
that he has
every
fucked up.
meeting I had,
Mhm.
every meeting I
But
had,
most
and it meet a
people,
lot of
if you
families,
said
including
that to
Gold
them,
Star families and military
if
families.
it's
Every
their
meeting I had,
president,
and I had
oh,
to
you
meet him.
shouldn't
I
see
had
that.
to.
Show
It would be
respect.
hard to
Mhm.
have canceled everything.
Show respect
I
to
said,
the
"You know,
office."
this is dangerous.
Why?
And you catch
works
it.
for
And
me.
you know,
I hired
caught it.
him.
I learned a lot.
Mhm.
I learned a lot. Great doctors, great hospitals. And now I recovered. 99.9 of young people recover. 99% of people recover. We have to recover. We can't close up our nation. We have to open our school, and we can't close up our nation, or you're not going to have a nation.
And of course, the CDC has said young people can get sick with COVID-19 and can pass it. Vice President Biden, I want to talk broadly about strategy.
Shut up. Oh, this ain't gonna go well for him, cause she's.
Put that little
He says that
like a
we're,
little bit
you
of
know, we're
fact
learning
check
to
in
live
there,
with it.
and then you
People
it's
are
like
learning to die with it. You folks home will have an empty chair at the kitchen table this morning. That man or wife going to bed tonight and reaching over to try to touch their, out of habit, where their wife or husband was, is gone. Learning to live with it. Come on. We're dying with it. Because he's never said, he said it's dangerous. When's the last time? Is it really dangerous still? Are we dangerous? You tell the people it's dangerous now? What should they do about the danger? And you say, I take no responsibility.
Let me talk about your two.
Excuse me,
Very quickly.
I take full responsibility. It's not my fault that he came here. It's China's fault. And you know what? It's not Joe's fault that he came here either.
Oh my God.
It's China's fault. They kept it from going into the rest of China for the most part.
It's
but
not
they
my
didn't
fault,
keep it
Mom,
from
it's his
coming out to
fault.
the world.
But you know what?
Europe and
This.
ourselves.
So this is the pivot. This is what his campaign wanted. In a way, this is brilliant. I take full responsibility, not for it coming here, so I can ignore everything else. It's not even Joe's fault it came here. I'm going to blame Big Bad China, because then that's going to be a trigger word. If I say China enough, it's going to be something that for people who are listening, they're going to be like, yeah, it's China's fault.
Perhaps just to finish this, I was kidding on that, but just to finish this, when I closed, he said I shouldn't have closed. And that went on for months. What Nancy Pelosi said the same thing. She was dancing on the streets in Chinatown in San Francisco. But when I closed, he said,
What?
this is a terrible thing, you're xenophobic. I think he called me racist even. And
You are
because I
racist.
was closing it to China. Now he says I should have closed it earlier. It just, Joe, it doesn't work.
I didn't say either of those things.
You
I didn't say
certainly
should've
did.
called
You
Lucy,
certainly
and I
did.
I talked about a xenophobia in a different context. It wasn't about closing the border to Chinese coming to the United States.
All right, I want to talk about both of your different strategies to
He
handling.
thought I shouldn't have closed the border.
Well, let's-
That's obvious.
Is that, do you want to respond to that quickly, Vice President
No.
Biden? Okay. Let's talk about your different strategies for dealing with this. Mr. Vice President, you suggested you would support new shutdowns if scientists recommended it. What do you say to Americans who are fearful that the cost of shutdowns, the impact on the economy, the higher rates of hunger, depression, domestic and substance abuse outweighs the risk of exposure to the virus?
What I would say is I'm going to shut down the virus, not the country. It's his ineptitude that caused the country to have to shut down in large part. Why businesses have gone under, why schools are closed, why so many people have lost their living, and why they're concerned. Those other concerns are real. That's why he should have been, instead of in a sand trap at his golf course, he should have been negotiating with Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats and Republicans about what to do about the acts they were passing for billions of dollars to make sure people had the capacity.
But you haven't ruled out more shutdowns.
Oh, well, no, I'm not shutting down the net, but there are, look, you need standards. The standard is if you have a reproduction rate in a community that's above a certain level, everybody says, slow up,
Oh, no.
more social distancing, do not open bars and do not open gymnasiums, do not open until you get this under control, under more control. Well, when you do open, give the people the capacity to be able to open and have the capacity to do it safely.
Big
For
go.
example,
He is
schools.
eating.
Schools,
He is
they need a lot of
dying
money.
alive.
They need to deal with businesses. They need to deal with smaller classes.
But oh
Teachers
my
and
God, he's
class.
listening.
And he's refused to support that money. Or at
Because
least
the
up to now.
best thing he can do this debate is shut up.
Yep.
Because Joe, unfortunately, through no fault of his own, shoots his own self in the foot more often than anything else. So if I shut up and let Joe,
Because he trips over his words.
yep. So if he can just shut up,
They're dying.
he may actually cover some ground at the end of this.
All he talks about is shutdowns. No, we're not going to shut down, and we have to open our schools. And it's like, as an example, I have a young son. He also tested positive. By the time I spoke to the doctor the second time, he was fine. It just went away. Young people,
It doesn't just go
I guess it's their
away.
immune system.
Let me follow up with you, President Trump. You've demanded schools open in person and insist they can do it safely. But just yesterday, Boston became the latest city to move its public school system entirely online after a coronavirus spike. What is your message to parents who worry that sending their children to school will endanger not only their kids, but also their teachers and families?
I want to open the schools. The transmittal rate to the teachers is very small, but I want to open the schools. We have to open our country.
That's
We're not gonna
bullshit.
have a country. You can't do this. We can't keep this country closed. This is a massive country.
What
with a
does
massive
what
economy.
does not
People
having
losing
school in
their
person
jobs.
have to
They're
do with
committing
keeping
suicide.
the country
There's
Parents
closed?
being home.
Alcohol, drugs at a level that nobody's ever seen before. There's abuse, tremendous abuse.
Maybe-
We have to open
How
our
do you
country.
know you
Help
haven't? It
yourself.
hasn't happened yet.
The cure cannot be
My
rushed.
question is, how do you like? He's speaking like these are truths.
And he wants to close
You
down-
haven't
close
done it.
down the country.
Right?
If
How do you
one
know that
person
that's
in
going to
our-
happen?
in our
Right?
How-
Massive bureaucracy says we should close it down.
Vice President Biden, your
Simply
response.
not true. We ought to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We ought to be able to safely
Like that
open,
line.
but would they need resources to open? You need to be able to, for example, if you're going to open a business, have social distancing within the business. You need to have, if you have a restaurant, you need to have plexiglass dividers so people cannot infect one another. You need to be in a position where you can take testing rapidly and know whether a person is in fact infected. You need to be able to trace. You need to be able to provide all the resources that are needed to do this. And that is not inconsistent with saying that what we're going to make sure that we open safely. And by the way,
But yeah,
you teachers
what's the
out
difference
there,
between
not that
requesting
many
that
guys, so don't
and
worry about it.
requesting that a business follows health guidelines?
Exactly. What's the
I wanna have
difference
a
between
What's happened to New York?
how is it
It's
so
a ghost
difficult
town. It's a ghost town.
to
And you
add
talk about
these
plexiglass. These are
things
restaurants that are dying.
temporarily
These are businesses with no
to
money.
OSHA guidelines?
Putting up plexiglass is unbelievably expensive, and it's not the answer. I mean, you're going to sit there in a cubicle wrapped around with plastic. These are businesses that are dying, Joe. You can't do that to people. You
Well,
just
that's
can't.
why he's saying
But
you
the
give
flip
them
side
the
of that-
fucking.
Wonderful city
Yeah,
for-
but the flip side of that is you open it, people don't feel safe.
They're not gonna go. They close it up, or they feel safe because you're a fucking moron. They go and they get sick
States and red states.
and
They're all
potentially
United
die.
States. And look at the states that are having such a spike in the coronavirus. They're the red states. They're the states in the Midwest. They're the states in the upper Midwest. That's where the spike is occurring significantly. But they're all Americans. They're all Americans. And what we have to do is say, wear these masks, number one. Make sure we get the help that the businesses need that has money's already been passed to do that. It's been out there since the beginning of the summer and nothing's happened.
President, New York has lost more than 40,000 people, 11,000 people in nursing homes.
President Trump, what
When you
about-
say spike, take a look at what's happening in Pennsylvania, where they've had it closed. Take a look at what's happening with your friend in Michigan, where her husband's the only one allowed to do anything. It's been like a prison. Now it was just ruled unconstitutional. Take a look at North Carolina. They're having spikes, and they've been closed, and they're getting killed financially. We can't let that happen, Joe. You can't let that happen. We have to open up. And we understand the disease. We have to protect our seniors. We have to protect our elderly. We have to protect.
It annoys me that that's another fucking trigger word that he uses all the time. We need to open up. Like,
Testing in the world by by far. That's why we have so many cases.
Let me follow up with you before we move on to our next section. President Trump, this week you called Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's best-known infectious disease expert, quote, a disaster. You described him and other medical experts as, quote, idiots. If you're not listening to them, who are you listening to as you fight this?
I'm listening to all of them, including Anthony. I get along very well with Anthony, but
Except that he called
he
him
did say
a disaster and an
wear
idiot.
masks. He did say
He didn't say don't wear masks.
He did early.
this is not going to be a
Early.
problem.
Very.
Talking way when this first started.
Yeah.
But
But that he didn't say don't wear masks. He said that there's no
I said,
reason to.
no. He said there's no proof yet that you need to.
But as
He didn't
any-
say don't do it.
But as anybody who's educated, as more information becomes available, I change my opinion.
Yeah.
You can't then blame me for an opinion I had before I became more educated. The problem, what you're doing, is you know stuff already, and you're still spouting the same things.
Yeah.
He happens to be a good person.
Vice President Biden, your response quickly, and then we're going to move on to the next
My
section.
response is that think about what the president knew in January and didn't tell the American people. He was told this was a serious virus that spread in the air, and it was much worse than the flu. He went on record and said to one of your colleagues, recorded, that in fact he knew how dangerous it was, but he didn't want to tell us. He didn't want to tell us because he didn't want us to panic. He didn't want us, Americans don't panic. He panicked. But guess what? In the meantime, we found out in the New York Times the other day that, in fact, his folks went to Wall Street and said this is a really dangerous thing. And a memo out of that meeting, not from his administration, but from some of the brokers, said sell short because we got to get moving. It's a dangerous
Well,
problem.
this is
I'm going
what
to give you
this
30
is what I
seconds to
have.
respond, and then we're
At the
going
Wall
to
Street
move
one,
on.
I don't know. Somebody went to Wall Street. You're the one that takes all the money from Wall Street. I don't take it.
I have-
You have raised a lot of money.
Where's that
Tremendous
even
amounts of
coming
money.
from?
And every time you raise money, deals are made, Joe. I could raise so much more money as president and as somebody that knows most of those people. I could call the heads of Wall Street, the heads of every company in America. I would blow away every record, but I don't want to do that because it puts me in a bad position. And then you bring up
Are
Wall
you
Street.
kidding?
You're bringing up Wall Street. Because you're the one
Are
that
you
makes money from
kidding?
Wall Street.
You're joking, right? That's not a real
You're
thing.
joking. You're
Like,
joking.
you wouldn't believe, we don't need money. We have plenty of money. In fact, we beat Hillary Clinton with a tiny fraction of the money that she was able.
All right, gentlemen, we're going
Don't
to move
tell me
on.
about
The
Wall
average
We're gonna-
contribution, $43.
All right, we're going to move on to our next section,
So shut
which is national security. And I do want to start with the security of our elections and some breaking news from overnight. Just last night, top intelligence officials confirmed again that both Russia and Iran are working to influence this election. Both countries have obtained U.S. voter registration information, these officials say, and Iran sent intimidating messages to Florida voters. This question goes to you, Mr. Vice President. What would you do to put an end to this threat? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
I made it clear, and I asked everyone else to take the pledge. I made it clear that any country, no matter who it is, that interferes in American elections will pay a price. They will pay a price. And it's been overwhelmingly clear this election, I won't even get into the last one, this election, that Russia has been involved, China has been involved to some degree, and now we learn that Iran is involved. They will pay a price if I'm elected. They're interfering with American sovereignty. That's what's going on right now. They're interfering with American sovereignty. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't think the president said anything to Putin about it. I don't think he's talking to him a lot. I don't think he said a word. I don't know why he hadn't said a word to Putin about it. And I don't know what he has recently said, if anything, to the Iranians. My guess is he'd probably be more outspoken with regard to the Iranians. But the point is this.
Oh, because they're brown people.
Countries trying to interfere in the outcome of our election. His own national security advisor told him that what is happening with his buddy, I will. His buddy, Rudy Giuliani, he's being used as a Russian pawn. He's being fed information that is Russian, that is not true. And then what happens? Nothing happens. And then you find out that everything that's going on here about Russia is wanting to make sure that I do not get elected the next president of the United States because they know I know them and they know me. I don't understand why this president is unwilling to take on Putin when he's actually paying bounties to kill American soldiers in Afghanistan, when he's engaged in activities that are trying to destabilize all of NATO. I don't know why he doesn't do it, but it's worth asking the question, why isn't that being done? Any country that interferes with us us will, in fact, pay a price because they're affecting our sovereignty.
President Trump, same question to you. Let me ask the
Yeah.
question. You're going to have 2 minutes to respond. For 2 elections in a row now, there has been substantial interference from foreign adversaries. What would you do in your next term to put an end to this? 2 minutes
Well,
uninterrupted.
let me respond
the
to
other.
the first part, as Joe answered. Joe got $3.5 million from Russia, and it came through Putin because he was very friendly with the former mayor of Moscow, and it was the mayor of Moscow's wife. And you got $3.5 million. Your family got $3.5 million, and you know, someday you're going to have to explain, why did you get 3.5? I never got any money from Russia. I don't get money from Russia. Now, about your thing last night, I knew all about that. And through John Ratcliffe, who is fantastic, he said, the one thing that's common to both of them, they both want you to lose. Because there has been nobody tougher to Russia. Between the sanctions, nobody tougher than me on Russia. Between the sanctions, between all of what I've done with NATO, you know, I've got
Is
the
that
NATO countries
before or
to put
after you have
Yeah.
Putin's dick in your
What
mouth?
are you talking? Like, he knows this stuff. Like, you can look it up, right?
Russia. I sold, while he was selling pillows and sheets, I sold tank busters to Ukraine. There has been nobody tougher on Russia than Donald Trump. And I'll tell you, they were so bad. They took over the submarine port. You remember that very well. During your term, during you and Barack Obama, they took over a big part of what should have been Ukraine. You handed it to them, but you were getting a lot of money from Russia. They were paying you a lot of money, and they probably still are. But now, with what came out today, it's even worse. All of the emails, the horrible emails of the kind of money that you were raking in, you and your family. And Joe, you were vice president when some of this was happening, and it should have never happened. And I think you owe an explanation to the American people. Why is it? Somebody just had a news conference a little while ago who was essentially supposed to work with you and your family. But what he said was damning. And regardless of me, I think you have to clean it up and talk to the American people. Maybe you can do it right now.
Vice President Biden, you may respond in 30
Please,
seconds.
Speaker.
And then I do want to follow up on the election security.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life. We learned that this president paid 50 times the tax in China, has a secret bank account with China, does business in China, and in fact is talking about me taking money. I've not taken a single penny from any country whatsoever, ever. Number one. Number two, this is a president, I have released all of my tax returns. 22 years, go look at them. 22 years of my tax return. You have not released a single solitary year of your tax return. What are you hiding? Why are you unwilling? The foreign countries are paying you a lot. Russia's paying you a lot. China's paying you a lot. And your hotels and all your businesses all around the country, all around the world. And China's building a new road to a new a golf course you have overseas. So what's going on here? Why don't you release your tax return and stop talking about corruption?
President Trump, your response.
First of all, I called my accountants under audit. I'm going to release them as soon as we can. I want to do it. How great this company is.
You've been saying
do
that
it.
for almost 5 years now,
do
Chief.
it.
$150.
We're gonna release them
I asked them
as soon as possible,
"What did I pay?"
which is like
They
25
said,
years
"Sir,
from
you
now."
prepaid tens of millions of dollars. I prepaid my tax. Tens over the last number of years. Tens of millions of dollars I prepaid. Because at some point they think it's an
So
estimate.
$750
They think I may have to
is
pay
tens of
tax.
millions.
So I already prepaid it. Nobody told me that.
Did your accountant
Nobody
tell you
told
when
you
you
that.
released
Excuse
them?
me. And it wasn't written.
Did your accountant tell you when you're going to release them?
$150, which I think is a filing fee. But let me just tell you, I prepaid
A filing
millions
fee.
and millions of dollars in taxes. Number one. Number two, I don't make money from China. You do. I don't make money from Ukraine. You do.
Joe's
I don't make
face.
money from
Joe's like, I do?
Oh, really? Where'd that go?
$2.5 million, Joe. And your son gave you. They even have a statement that we have to give 10% to the big man. You're the big man, I think. I don't know. Maybe you're not. But you're the big man, I think. Your son said
What?
we have to give 10% to the big man. Joe, what's that all about? It's terrible.
All right, gentlemen, I want to ask you both
10%
some
to
questions
the
about
big-
all of
what
this.
the
I'm
fuck
gonna
is
let you
that?
both respond very quickly. You just said you spoke to your accountant
Yes.
about potentially releasing your taxes. Did he tell you when you can release them? Do you
As
have a
soon as the audit is
deadline for
finished.
when you're going to release
I
them?
get
to the American
treated
people?
worse than the Tea Party got treated. Because I have a lot of people in there, deep down in the IRS, they treat me horribly. We made a deal, it was all settled until I decided to run for president. I get treated very badly by the IRS, very unfairly. But we had a deal all done. As soon as we're completed with it.
Could you imagine if a sitting president would get arrested for tax evasion?
It's worse than paying. I paid in advance. It's called prepaying your taxes. I paid in advance.
I want to ask you both about questions regarding your potential foreign entanglements and questions that have been raised to give you both a chance to talk about this more broadly. Respond very quickly and then I'll get to my question.
Why did he's been saying this for 4 years? Show us. Just show us. Stop playing around. You've been saying for 4 years you're going to release your taxes. Nobody knows, Mr. President. What they do know is you're not paying your taxes, or you're paying taxes that are so low. When last time he said what he paid, he said, I only pay that little because I'm smart. I know how to game the system. Come on. Come on, folks.
So,
And President Trump, and then I want to get to two questions to both of you.
Sure.
I was put through a phony witch hunt for 3 years. It started before I even got elected. They spied on my campaign.
What does
No
that
president
have
should
to
ever
do
have
with
to go through
Right?
anything
What does
that
that
we
have to
just
do with
talked
how
about?
much you paid in
That
taxes?
is, you
And
are.
18 angry Democrats and FBI agents all over the place.
What does your
spent $48
impeachment,
million. They went
which
through everything
everybody
I
found
had,
reason
including
to
my tax
remove you,
returns.
but
And they
you
found
had enough
absolutely no collusion
people
and nothing wrong.
in the
48
Senate to
million.
not
I guarantee
get
if I spend $1 million
removed.
on you, I could find
What
plenty
does
wrong.
that have
Because
to do
the
with
kind
how
of
much you
things
paid in
that you've
taxes?
done and the kind of monies that your family has taken.
Income
I mean, your
taxes.
brother made money in Iraq.
Let me-
Millions of dollars. Your other brother made a fortune, and it's all through you, Joe. And they say you get some of it, and you do live very well. You have houses all over the place. You live very well.
Are you talking
Let me
about?
just ask some questions
What is he
about all of this
talking
broadly.
about?
Vice President Biden, there have been questions about the work your son has done in China and for a Ukrainian energy company when you were vice president. In retrospect, was anything about those relationships inappropriate or unethical?
Nothing was unethical. Here's what the deal. With regard to Ukraine, we had this whole question about whether or not, because he was on the board, I later learned of Burisma, a company, that somehow I had done something wrong. Yet every single solitary person, when he was going through his impeachment, testifying under oath who worked for him, said I did my job impeccably. I carried out U.S. policy. Not one single solitary thing was out of line. Not a single thing. Number one. Number two, the guy who got in trouble in Ukraine was this guy trying to bribe the Ukrainian government to say something negative about me, which they would not do and did not do because it never, ever, ever happened. My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about, China. I have not had, the only guy made money from China is this guy. He's the only one. Nobody else has made money from China.
Never
President
did
Trump,
deal with
let me
By the
ask
way,
my question to you.
Could I just one thing?
Very quickly.
His son didn't have a job for a long time. Was sadly no longer in the military service. I won't get into that. And he didn't have a job. As soon as he became vice president, Burisma, not the best reputation in the world. I hear they paid him $183,000 a month. Listen to this.
Remember when people were
And they gave
going
him a $3
after
million upfront payment.
All right.
And he had no
his
energy.
youngest?
Because he can't. Because there's nothing else he has.
Investigated that. No one said anything he did was wrong in Ukraine.
Okay, President Trump.
There's
this is-
nothing like
since you took
this
office,
is the show of somebody who has
personally promoted
nothing.
your properties abroad.
So he's going after his
I
kids.
got
Which was referenced as-
this-
Like that's just that can well first off considering the urchins of children he has. And I'm talking about the adult children.
The bank account you're referring to, which is
That are-
everybody knows about
that are
it's listed.
just
The bank account
scumbags.
was in 2013.
And he's talking about
That's when it
Joe's
was
son?
opened. It was
Yeah.
closed
Really?
in 2015, I believe. And then I decided, because I was thinking about doing a deal in China like millions of other people. I was thinking about it, and I decided I'm not going to do it. Didn't like it. I decided not to do it. Had an account open, and I closed it.
Okay.
Excuse me. And then, unlike him, where he's vice
Except that
president
it's
and
still
he does
open.
business, I then decided to run for president after that. That was before. So I closed it before I even ran for president, let alone became president. Big difference. He is the vice president of the United States, and his son, his brother, and his other brother are getting rich. They're like a vacuum cleaner. They're sucking
Okay,
up money every
President Trump,
place he
thank you. We
goes.
do need
Not
to
true.
move on. I do want to ask you, Vice President Biden, about China. Let's talk about China more broadly. There have, of course, President Trump has said that they should pay for not being fully transparent in regards to the coronavirus. If you were president, would you make China pay? And please be specific. What would that look like?
What I'd make China do is play by the international rules, not like he has done. He has caused the deficit in China to go up, not down, with China, up, not down. We are making sure that in order to do business in China, you have to give all your intellectual property. You have to have a partner in China. It's 51%. We would not do that at all, number one. Number two, we're in a situation where China would have to play by the rules internationally as well. When I met with Xi, when I was still vice president, he said we're setting up air identification zones in the South China Sea. You can't fly through them. I said we're going to fly through them. We just flew B-52, B-1 bombers through it. We're not going to pay attention. They have to play by the rules. And what's he do? He embraces guys like the thugs like in North Korea and the Chinese president and Putin and others, and he pokes his finger in the eye of all of our friends, all of our allies. We make up we're 25% of the world's economy. We need to be having the rest of our friends with us saying to China, these are the rules. You play by them or you're going to pay the price for not paying by them economically. That's the way I will run it, and that's what we did in upholding steel tariffs and a range of other things when we were president and vice president.
All right, and let's talk about North Korea.
Excuse me, no, I have to respond to that.
Okay, very quickly, and then we're going to move on to
with
North
$1.5
Korea.
billion from China to
Not
manage after
true.
spending 10 minutes in office and being in Air Force Two. Number one. Number two, there's a very strong email talking about your family wanting to make $10 million a year for introductions.
President Trump, on China policy, though, what specifically are you going to do? What specifically are you going to do to make China pay? You said you're going
First
to.
of all, China is paying. They're paying billions and billions of dollars. I just gave.
She's not having any of his shit.
I just gave $28 billion.
She's like, look, you are going to answer this question, not try to circle it back to something else, okay?
Money. Didn't come from China.
The taxpayers. It's called China. China paid
true.
$28 million, and you know what they did to pay it, Joe? They devalued their currency, and they also paid out. And you know who got the money? Our farmers, our great farmers, because they were targeted. You never charged them anything. Also, I charged them 25% on dumped steel because they were killing our steel industry. We were not going to have a steel industry.
Okay.
And now we have a steel
Okay,
industry.
Vice President Biden, your response, please.
Our response is, look, this isn't about, there's a reason why he's bringing up all this malarkey. There's a reason for it. He doesn't want to talk about the substantive issues. It's not about his family and my family. It's about your family. And your family's
I like that
hurting
line.
badly. If you're making less than, if you're a middle-class family, you're getting hurt badly right now. You're sitting at the kitchen table this morning deciding, well, we can't get new tires for the ball because we have to wait another month or so. Or are we going to be able to pay the mortgage? Or who's going to tell her she can't go back to community college? They're the decisions you're making. And the middle-class families like I grew up in Scranton and Claymont, they're in trouble. We should be talking about your families, but that's the last thing he wants to talk about.
I want
There's
to
a
talk about
typical
North
statement.
Korea.
Excuse me,
I
just
do
one
want to
second,
turn to
please.
10 seconds, Mr. President.
That's
10
a
seconds.
typical political statement. Let's get off this.
What
China
happened
thing,
to
and then he
muting the
looks,
mics?
Family around the table, everything. Just a typical politician. When I see that,
Let's talk
I'm
about
not
North
a typical
Korea now.
politician.
Okay.
That's why I got elected.
Let's talk
You're-
about-
Let's get off the
So you got
subject of
elected.
China. Let's talk around sitting around the table.
All right.
Come on, Joe. You can do better.
We're going to talk about North Korea now. President Trump, you've met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un 3 times. You've talked about your beautiful
They should
letters
give
with
her
him. You've
the-
touted the fact
the
that there hasn't
control
been a
over
war
muting the
or
mics.
long-range missile test. And yet North Korea recently rolled out its biggest ever intercontinental ballistic missile and continues to develop its nuclear arsenal. Do you see that as a betrayal of the relationship you
No.
forged? Just 30 seconds here because we need to get on to the next.
So when I met with Barack Obama, we sat in the
Barack
White House right at the beginning, had a great
Obama.
conversation. It was supposed to be 15 minutes, and it was well over an hour. He said the biggest problem we have with is North Korea. He indicated we will be in a war with North Korea. Guess what? it would be a nuclear war. And he does have plenty of nuclear capability. In the meantime, I have a very good relationship with him. Different kind of a guy, but he probably thinks the same thing about me. We have a different kind of a relationship. We have a very good relationship.
That's
and there's no
not something
war.
you should be
And
bragging about.
2 months ago, he broke into a certain area. They said, oh, there's going to be trouble. I said, no, they're not, because he's not going to do that. And I was right. Look, instead of being in a war where millions of people, Seoul, you know, is 25 miles away, millions and millions, 32 million people in Seoul, millions of people would be dead right now.
President
We
Trump,
don't have
that's
a war,
30
and I have a
seconds.
good
Thank you.
relationship.
Vice President Biden, to you, North Korea conducted 4 nuclear tests under the Obama administration. Why do you think you would be able to rein in this persistent threat?
Because I make it clear, which we were making clear to China, they had to be part of the deal. Because here's the I made it clear, and as a spokesperson of the administration when I went to China, that they said, why are you moving your missile defense up so close? Why are you moving more forces here? Why are you continuing to do military maneuvers with South Korea? I said, because North Korea is a problem, and we're going to continue to do it so we can control them. We're going to make sure we can control them and make sure they cannot hurt us. And so if you want to do something about it, step up and help. If not, it's going to continue. What has he done? He's legitimized North Korea. He's talked about his good buddy who's a thug, and he talks about how we're better off, and they have much more capable missiles, able to reach U.S. territory much more easily than ever did before.
Let me follow up with you, Vice President Biden. You've said you wouldn't meet with Kim Jong-un without preconditions. Are there any conditions under which you would meet with him?
On the condition that he would agree that he would be drawing down his nuclear capacity to get that the Korean Peninsula should be a nuclear-free zone.
All right, let's move on to American families.
They tried
Very
to
quickly,
meet with
10
him.
seconds,
They
President.
tried to meet with him. He wouldn't do it. He didn't like Obama. He didn't like him. He wouldn't do it.
Okay,
I know
gotta
for a
give him a
fact they
chance to
tried.
respond to that
He
before we
wouldn't
move
do
on.
it.
You
And
know
it's
what?
okay. You know what? North Korea.
The only
we're not in a
people
war.
that-
We have a good relationship. You know,
that
people understand. Having a good relationship
he
with leaders of
likes.
other
We
countries
have
is
a lot
a
of,
good
we
thing.
have a lot of questions.
Hang on.
It's not
Your
a-
response.
We had
Kim
a good
Jong-un
relationship with Hitler
or Kim
before
Kim
he, in fact,
Jong-il.
invaded Europe,
Which one is it?
the rest of Europe. Come on. The reason he would not meet
You're not
with
listening to
President
me?
I
Obama
wasn't.
is
I'm so
because
sorry.
Obama said,
I was-
"We're gonna
what'd you
talk
say?
about denuclearization.
I'm so sorry.
We're not gonna legitimize you. We're
Which
gonna
one
continue
is
to
it
put
that's currently in
stronger
power, Un or
sanctions
Il?
on you.
Un.
That's
That's
why
what I
he
thought.
wouldn't meet with us.
All right,
And it didn't
So what I was trying to say was
President Trump, okay.
him saying that Kim Jong Un
North Korea was a mess.
likes him and gets along with him isn't a fucking compliment.
Yeah.
That's not something to brag about. The only people that Kim Jong Un likes are the people that kiss his ass.
Yeah.
A mess.
You're
And
pretty
Obama
much
would be, I think,
admitting
the first to say it was the single
to being
biggest problem
subservient
that our
to
country
Kim
Let's move on to
Jong-un.
American families and the economy. One of the issues that's most important to them is healthcare, as you both know. Today there was a key vote on a new Supreme Court Justice, Amy Coney Barrett, and healthcare is at the center of her confirmation fight. Over 20 million Americans get their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. It's headed to the Supreme Court, and your administration, Mr. President, is advocating for the court to overturn it. If the Supreme Court does overturn that law, those 20 million Americans could lose their health insurance almost overnight. So what would you do if those people have their health insurance taken away? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
First of all, I've already done something that nobody thought was possible. Through the legislature, I terminated the individual mandate. That is the worst part of Obamacare, as we call it. The individual mandate where you have to pay a fortune for the privilege of not having to pay for bad health insurance. I terminated it.
What?
It's gone. Now it's in court because Obamacare is no good. But then I made a decision. Run it as well as you can to my people, great people. Run it as well as you can. I could have gone the other
Like,
route and made everybody very unhappy.
There are times that he
They
could
ran it.
make an argument for some things he's
Here's the
done.
problem.
If
No
he
matter what you
would
run,
just
it's no
stop
good. What we
trying
want
to
do
make it
is
into a
terminate it.
childish
We have the individual
name-calling
mandate.
fight
I don't know
and
which
just
one,
use
if we
the
don't
fact,
win, we'll have to run it,
like,
and we'll
yes,
have
the
Obamacare,
individual
but it'll be
mandate
better.
was
But it no
not
longer
good because,
is
like, if you
Obamacare
can't get
because
insurance,
of the
Yeah.
individual
like
I
we
gotta pay
couldn't,
extra
you
taxes,
had
yeah.
to pay extra taxes on
Yeah.
it, unless you could actually like find in the very fucking inaccurate what's it called, table, that according to the government, you actually were making less than what you could afford to pay for
Yeah, for taxes. I mean, for health insurance.
health
Yeah.
insurance.
Always protecting people with pre-existing conditions. And one thing very important,
But
we have 180 million
instead
people
of
that have great
making
private
that
healthcare,
point,
far more than we're talking about with
in
Obamacare.
even
Joe Biden is gonna
layman's
terminate all of those
terms,
policies.
he decides
These are
to go
people that
straight for
love
the
their healthcare.
it's
People that have been successful,
get to
middle-income people,
you have to pay to not have to pay for crappy insurance.
180 million plans, 180
Stop being a
million
child.
people, families.
Speak like an adult.
Yeah. But that would be too
basically
easy.
socialized medicine. He won't even have a choice. They want to terminate 180
What's wrong with
million
socialized
plans.
medicine?
We have done an incredible job on healthcare.
It's commie
If you
stuff.
do
Mommy.
it correctly and you actually put enough money into it instead of into unnecessary things, why would socialized medicine be a bad thing? Actually taking care of your citizens.
Obamacare with a public
Because those people don't deserve to have health care.
The public option is an option that says that if you in fact do not have the wherewithal to be, if you qualify for Medicaid and you do not have the wherewithal in your state to get Medicaid, you automatically are enrolled, providing competition for insurance companies. That's what's going to happen. Secondly, we're going to make sure we reduce the premiums and reduce drug prices by making sure that there's competition that doesn't exist now by allowing the Medicare to negotiate drug prices with the insurance companies. Thirdly, the idea that I want to eliminate private insurance, the reason why I had such a fight with 20 candidates for the nomination was I support private insurance. That's why I didn't. Not one single person with private insurance would lose their insurance under my plan, nor did they under Obamacare. They did not lose their insurance unless they chose they wanted to go to something else. Lastly, we're going to make sure we're in a situation that we actually protect pre-existing. There's no way he can protect pre-existing conditions. None. Zero. You can't do it in the ether. He's been talking about this for a long time. He's never come up with a plan. I guess we're going to get the pre-existing condition plan the same time we get the infrastructure plan that we've been waiting since 17, 18, 19, and 20. The fact, I still have a few more minutes. I know you're getting anxious. The fact is that he's already cost the American people, because of his terrible handling of the COVID virus and the economic spillover, 10 million people have lost their private insurance. And he wants to take away 22 million more people who have it under Obamacare, and over 110 million people with pre-existing conditions, and all the people from COVID are going to have pre-existing conditions. What are they going to do?
I have a follow-up for you, Vice President Biden. It relates to something that President Trump said. He's accusing you of wanting socialized medicine. What do you say to people who have concerns that your health care plan, which includes a government insurance option, takes the country one step closer to a health care system run entirely by the government?
I say it's ridiculous. It's like saying that, the idea that the fact that there's a public option that people can choose, that makes it a socialist plan. Look, the difference between the president, I think healthcare is not a privilege, it's a right. Everyone should have the right to have affordable healthcare. And I am very proud of my plan. It's gotten endorsed by
That's the most
all the major
annoying
labor
thing
unions, whenever
they're talking about it
on
on either side.
This is something that's going to save
People
people's
don't
lives.
have a
This is
right to
going give some
affordable
people
health
an
care. They have a right to health
opportunity,
care.
an opportunity to have health care for their
Period.
children. How many of you home are worried and rolling around in bed?
So this is the problem between having old people have this conversation who are used to a particular way of thinking, and people like us who have seen other places in the world be able to do this and still be successful. Canada is a very thriving economy.
But that's the thing. Not even Canada can be considered socialized medicine any longer.
What do you mean?
Because Trudeau oh God, what's the word? Basically, they let private insurance back.
Then Bernie Sanders wants it even more. Bernie Sanders wants it. The Democrats want it.
They let private insurance come back, so now they're market insurance again.
We're going to stop fracking. We're going to stop fracking. Then he goes to Pennsylvania.
So it's affordable healthcare, not
Socialized healthcare, yeah.
And he says, oh,
But if you look at Cuba,
I never asked that question.
They have some of the best health care in the world.
You're handling this, I have to say.
By the way,
But somebody should ask the question.
You can ask-
He goes for a year. There will be
We
no
have
fracking,
we
there will
do
be
have
no-
we have a number of topics.
No, but that's a big question.
Oh, shut the fuck up.
It's the same thing with socialized.
Guys, cut the
Your
mics.
response, please.
my response is people deserve to have affordable health care. Period. Period, period, period. And the Biden care proposal will in fact provide for that affordable health care, lower premiums. What we're going to do is going to cost some money. It's going to cost over $750 billion over 10 years to do it. And they're going to have lower premiums. You can buy into the better plans, the cheaper plans, lower your premiums, deal with unexpected billing, and have your drug prices drop significantly. He keeps talking about it. He hasn't done a thing for anybody on health care. Not a thing.
Interesting, when he
Very quickly,
says,
then I wanna talk
when
about
he
what's
says
happening
public
on
option,
Capitol
he's
Hill.
talking about socialized medicine. And when he, and healthcare. When he talks about a public option, he's talking about destroying your Medicare. Totally destroying.
How
and
is that
your
destroying
Social Security.
Medicare?
And this whole country will
That's
come down.
expanding
You know,
Medicare,
Bernie
if
Sanders
anything.
tried it in his state. He tried it in his state. His governor was a very liberal
How
governor. They
is
wanted
that
to make it
destroying
work.
Medicare?
Let's
It was
let Vice President
impossible.
Biden.
That's
It doesn't work.
funding healthcare.
This guy, he thinks he's running against
That's
somebody else.
expanding
He's running against
Medicare.
Joe Biden. I beat all those other people because I disagreed with them. Joe Biden is running against. And the idea that we're in a situation that they're going to destroy Medicare, this is the guy that the actuary at Medicare said, if in fact, at Social Security, if in fact he continues to withhold his plan to withhold the tax on Social Security, Social Security will be bankrupt by 2023 with no
3 years.
way to make up for it. This is the guy who's tried to cut Medicare. So
It would be bankrupt by the end of his second term, if he gets elected again.
He tried to get rid of, he tried to hurt Social Security years ago.
He tried to hurt.
He did.
He did it first.
It was him.
Social Security.
Look at
did.
him, guys.
He did it first, guys.
Guys.
He said I did. He did first.
I mean, yeah, he wasn't president yet, but he did.
If he's elected, the stock market will crash.
Okay, let's move on to
The stock market will crash.
Look, the idea that the stock market is booming is his only measure of what's happening. Where I come from in Scranton and Claymont, the people don't live off of the stock market. Just in the last three years during this crisis, the billionaires in this country made, according to the Wall Street, $700 billion more.
Poor Joe. It's not his fault he got a
So the
stutter.
fact that Joe can even, and you know what? I always give Joe more props for this. To have that kind of speech impediment and beat it and still do this?
we're gonna move on.
Because he doesn't even have that excuse.
Right?
That's like one of the, he lived there for a short period of time before he even knew
We're
it.
gonna move on
And
to
he
the next
left. And the
question.
people of Pennsylvania
Let me
will
move
show
on
you
to my
that.
next question,
They
gentlemen.
understand.
As of tonight,
Cut the
more than 12
mic.
million
You
people
guys said
outside
you were going to cut the mics.
They're going to give him, no, they were going to give him those 2 minutes uninterrupted, and you can see that now.
Those hit hardest are women,
So those 2 minutes, that's all they're going to give him.
Washington fighting over
Because
the
he would throw a hiss.
But that's what I'm saying, though, is just then he was talking over her.
Mm-hmm.
Because Nancy Pelosi
They should
doesn't
cut the
want
mics when
to
she's
prove
asking the questions or when she's moving on to the
I do,
questions,
but I
too.
still have to get her. Unfortunately, that's one of the reasons I think we're going to take over the House because of her. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve anything because she'd love to have some victories on a date called November 3rd. Nancy Pelosi does not
On
want
a
to
date
approve it.
called
We are
November
really willing
3rd.
and able to do something. Don't forget, we've already approved 3 plans and it's gone through, including the Democrats. In all fairness, this one she doesn't want. It's near the election because she thinks it helps her politically. I think it hurts her politically.
All right, Mr. Vice President,
You know, the Republican leader in the United States Senate said he can't pass it. He will not be able to pass it. He does not have Republican votes. Why isn't he talking to his Republican friends?
let me follow up with you, Vice President.
we made a deal,
Because he
let me
doesn't
ask
have any
Vice President Biden a
Republican
question.
friends.
You are the leader
Or he
of the
doesn't have enough.
Democratic Party. Why have you not pushed the Democrats to get a deal for the American people?
Well, I have, and they have pushed it. Look, they passed this act all the way back in the beginning of the summer. This is like it's not new. It's been out there. This HEROES Act has been sitting there. And look at what's happening. When I was in charge of the Recovery Act with $800 billion, I was able to get $145 billion to local communities that have to balance their budgets, the states have to balance their budgets, and then have to fire firefighters, teachers, first responders, law enforcement officers, so they can keep their cities.
Ooh, it pissed him off.
He will not support that. They have not done a
Trying to ask him
Look
why
at
he
his-
hasn't
look
been
at his-
pushing for it. He's like, I
Look at
have
his-
been. What the fuck?
Look at his forehead.
I know.
Passed in the House was
You
a
can normally see the wrinkles in his forehead. They just completely gone.
Democrat, by Democrats, cities and states. It was a way of getting a lot of money, billions and billions.
But you have Republicans who live in those cities.
A lot of money from our people's pockets to
Are there
people
not
that come into
Republicans
our
who live in
country
California?
illegally.
Apparently
We
not.
were gonna take care
For
of
all my
everything
Republicans
for
who
them.
live
And
in
what that
California?
does- and I'd love to do that. I'd
For
love to
all my
help.
Republicans
What
who
that
live in
does-
Illinois?
everybody all over the world was
For
like
all
pouring
my
into our
Republicans
country.
who live in
We
New
can't
York?
do it. This was a
Do
way
you
to
not
take
exist?
care of them. This
Do you
was a way
not
of
need
spending
assistance?
on things that had nothing to do with COVID.
I think you
He,
do.
it's like he just because the governor is Democratic or the mayors are Democratic, he's just ignoring them and thinking that the entire place.
I don't see red states and blue states. What I see is American, United States. And folks, every single state out there finds themselves in trouble. They're going to start laying off, whether they're red or blue, cops, firefighters, first responders, because teachers, because they have to balance their budget. And the founders were smart. They allowed the federal government to deficit spend to compensate for the United States of America.
I want to talk about the minimum wage, gentlemen. Mr. Vice President, we are talking a lot about struggling small businesses
Yes.
and business owners these days. Do you think this is the right time to ask them to raise the minimum wage? You, of course, support a $15 federal minimum
I
wage.
do, because I think one of the things we're going to have to do is we're going to have to bail them out too. We should be bailing them out now, those small businesses. You got 1 in 6 of them going under. They're not going to be able to make it back. They passed a package that allows us to be able to call PPP. Money is supposed to go to help them do everything from organize how they can deal with their businesses being open safely. Schools, how they can make classrooms smaller, how they can hire more teachers, how they can put ventilation systems in. They need the help. The businesses as well as the schools need the help.
I like this harnessed aggression though.
These guys will not help them.
Yeah.
It's not
Because you can tell he's getting pissed, but unlike the last election, when he felt like he was just getting pissed and frustrated,
I think it should
Now
be
it's
an option. Alabama is different
harnessed.
from New York.
Yeah.
New York is different from Vermont. Every state is different. It should be a state option.
you said very
we have to
recently-
help. It's very important. We have to help our small businesses.
You
How
said-
are you helping your small businesses when you're forcing wages? What's going to happen, and what's been proven to happen,
Forcing
is
wages.
when you do that, these small businesses fire many of their employees.
You said
Not
very
true,
recently you would
by the way.
consider raising the federal minimum
it.
wage to $15
Say
an
it.
hour. You said recently you would consider raising the federal minimum wage to
Well, I
$15 an hour. Is that still the case?
And I would consider it to an extent, but
In a
what I
second
really like is in a second administration, but not to a level that's going to put all these businesses out of business.
So how would
To
it's a
level-
federal
that- it would
minimum
be
wage?
The federal minimum wage. What do you mean not to the level of what are you
$15
talking
is not so
about?
bad. In other places, other states, $15 would
Okay,
be
President Trump,
ruinous.
thank you. Quick
No
response,
one
Vice
should
President
work
Biden.
2 jobs, 1 job, be below poverty. People are making $6, $7, $8 an hour. These first responders, we all clap for as they come down the street because they've allowed us to make it. What's happening? They deserve a minimum wage of $15. Anything below that puts you below the poverty level. And there is no evidence that when you raise the minimum wage, businesses go out of business. That is simply not true.
We're going to talk about
Folks,
immigration. We're going to talk about immigration now, gentlemen, and we're going to talk about families within this context. Mr. President, your administration separated children from their parents at the border, at least 4,000 kids. You've since reversed your zero tolerance policy, but the United States can't locate the parents of more than 500 children. So how will these families ever be reunited?
Children are brought here by coyotes and
Oh my
lots
God.
of bad people, cartels, and they're brought here, and they used to use them to get into our country. We now have as strong a border as we've ever had. We're over 400 miles of brand new wall. You see the numbers, and we let people in, but they have to come in legally, and they come in through
But
America.
how will you
But
reunite
let me
these
just tell
kids
you,
with their
let me
families,
just tell you,
Mr.
they
President?
built cages. You know, they used to say, I
you're
built the cages.
not
And then they had a picture in a certain
answering
newspaper.
the question.
And it was a picture of these horrible cages. And they said, look at these cages. President
That you
Trump built them.
used.
And then it was determined they were built.
You can't even,
in
like, don't get me
2014.
wrong.
That was him.
That's
Do you
true.
have a plan to reunite the kids?
Yes, we're working on it.
There were
We're
kids
trying
in
very hard,
detention
but a lot of
centers.
these
There were
kids come
people
out
in
without
detention
parents. They come
centers
over through cartels and through coyotes and through gangs.
through
Let me bring you
Obama's
into this
administration too.
quick response and then another question to you.
But you can't try to turn it around to Biden
Yeah.
when he was
Separating them at the border.
not the president. Granted, he could have told Barack, look, this ain't cool.
Yeah.
We shouldn't fucking be doing this. So I'm not like excusing Biden at all. But you can't turn around and be like, it was, they did it first.
Yeah. And see, this is the part that I'm glad Joe's making that point. Because
We changed the policy.
the separation of parents is the part that's not what the question is.
Talk about what we're talking about. What happened?
First off,
The
That- it-
separating of parents.
doesn't matter. People in cages at all,
Is
just
horrible.
because they're illegal,
Yeah, it's
just
trash.
because they came here illegally, even though it's completely legal for someone to come into the country.
It's criminal.
Let me ask you that.
Because that's the only way that they could claim asylum is to actually be inside of the country.
Well, you can do it at the borders. I think that's what the whole point was.
But
But
that, either
but a
way,
lot of
you
them are
have
like-
to actually physically be inside. You can't be at the border. You have to
Yeah.
be inside the country
yeah,
Let me ask about your
to claim asylum. Like, watch Bo, people.
did fail to
Yeah.
deliver
Like, Bo did a couple of episodes on this shit.
during the administration.
It's sick that any administration would have people in cages
Yeah.
or detention centers just because they were coming to this country from another.
I get that.
Made a mistake. It took too long
But
to get it right. Took too
to
long get
make
it
the
right.
heinous even worse, you separated children from their
Made it
parents,
very clear. With
kept them in ridiculously disgusting
pathway to citizenship for over
um,
11 million undocumented people.
conditions,
All of those
and then
so-called
lost their parents.
DACA kids, they're going
You
to
fucking
be-
lost their parents or
Yeah.
deported their parents
Yeah.
without getting them with their kids again?
To try to be a deterrent to have other people come into the country.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
do that is they go
Because now you'll have 500 kids who they're not going to care about, who you're going to end up just dumping somewhere. Luckily, right now they're with foster parents, so the hope is that this DACA bill that Biden's talking about, that will incorporate those kids in there.
here. Many were model citizens. Over 20,000 of them were first responders out there taking care of people during this crisis. We owe them. We owe them.
He had 8 years to do what he said he was going to do. And I've changed without having a specific, we got rid of catch and release. We got rid of a lot of horrible things that they put in and that they lived with. But he had 8 years he was vice president. He did nothing except build cages to keep children in.
Vice President
That you use to keep children in.
If in fact you had a family came across and they were arrested,
Both of you just need to stop talking on the subject.
Show up for a hearing. They were released, and guess what? They showed up for a hearing. This is the first president in the history of the United States of America that said anybody seeking asylum has to do it in another country. That's never happened before in America. That's never happened before in America. You come to the United States and you make your case that you seek asylum based on the following premise: why I deserve it under American law. They're sitting in squalor on the other side of the river.
President Trump, your response,
So
30
what?
seconds, and then we'll
It
move
just shows that he has no understanding of immigration of the law.
You don't have any.
This is a disaster.
You don't have any.
Would come in,
Baby,
a
they have to come into the country.
person would
Well, no, because this is, again, replaying the hits.
It is.
I'm not going to talk about the people who legitimately needed to get this done. No, I'm going to paint them all as rapists and murderers because that's what they all are.
and Border Patrol out to find them, we would say, come back in 2 years, 3 years, we're going to give you a court case. You need Perry Mason. We're going to give you a court case. When you say they come back, they don't come back, Joe.
Yeah.
They never come back.
Yes, they do, because they want to be citizens.
I hate to say this, but those with the lowest IQ, they
If
might
you
come back.
actually treated them like human beings,
And then we're going to move on to
they
the
would
next
come.
Joe.
Vice President
If you
Biden.
told them, okay, you can stay here, come to this court hearing
Check it out.
All right, let's move
But we
on.
don't have to worry
for
about it.
Let's
whatever,
move on to the next.
if they're not treated like animals, like scum, like they're going to get deported,
Let's
if
talk
anybody
about
knows that they're
our
even here from another country,
And I want to talk about the way Black
they would go to the
Americans
fucking court
experience
hearing.
race in this country. Part of that experience is something called the talk. It happens regardless of class and income. Parents who feel they have no choice but to prepare their children for the chance that they could be targeted, including by the police, for no reason other than the color of their skin. Mr. Vice President, in the next 2 minutes, I want you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
I do. You know, my daughter is a social worker, and she's written a lot about this. She has a graduate degree from the University of Pennsylvania in social work. And you know, one of the reasons why I ended up working on the east side of Wilmington, Delaware, which is 90% African American, was to learn more about what was going on. What I never had to tell my daughter, if she's pulled over, make sure she puts for a traffic stop, put both hands on top of the wheel and don't reach for the glove box because someone may shoot you. But a black parent, no matter how wealthy or how poor they are, has to teach their child when you're walking down the street, don't have a hoodie on when you go across the street, making sure that you, in fact, if you get pulled over, just yes sir, no sir, hands on top of the wheel, because you are in fact the victim, whether you're a person making child of a $300,000 a year person or someone who's on food stamps. The fact of the matter is there is institutional racism in America, and we have always said, we've never lived up to it. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women are created equal. Well, guess what? We have never, ever lived up to it. And we've always constantly been moving the needle further and further to inclusion, not exclusion. This is the first president to come along and says, that's the end of that. We're not going to do that anymore. We have to provide for economic opportunity, better education, better health care.
This is the first president to come out and say it.
Yeah, there's a couple of them that thought it.
A couple of them have put some
Yeah.
stuff in.
He's not the first one to think it.
How to do those things, just to give people a shot. It's about accumulating the ability to have wealth as well as it is to be free from violence.
President Trump, same question to you, and let me remind you of
The pouty
question.
lips?
I'd like you to speak directly to these families. Do you
He hit him with the
understand
pouty lips?
why these parents
Yep.
fear for their
Yep, he
children?
did.
Yes, I do. And again, he's been in government 47 years. He never did a thing except in 1994 when he did such harm to the black community. And they were called, and he called them super predators.
But
and he said
Is
that.
he?
said it,
I
super
think he's
predators.
getting
And they-
Him and Hillary confused.
He
I'm telling you,
is.
he's mishing
He's-
them all together.
getting him and Hillary
Super
confused.
predators.
Hillary was the one who
Nobody
called them
has done
super
more for the
predators.
black community than Donald Trump.
Oh, my dear sweet baby
He's
Jesus.
literally just
With the
taking
exception
everything he said
of
against
Abraham
Hillary
Lincoln, possible exception, but the
and
exception
saying
is
it
Abraham
against
Lincoln. Nobody
Biden.
has done what I've done. Criminal justice
and then
reform.
adding some more stuff
Obama
for Biden.
and Joe didn't do it. I don't even think they tried because they had no chance of doing it. They might have wanted to do it, but if you had to see the arms I had to twist to get that done, it was not a pretty picture. And everybody knows it, including some very liberal people that cried in my office. They cried in the Oval Office. 2 weeks later, they're out saying, gee, we have to defeat him. Criminal justice reform, prison reform, opportunity zones with Tim Scott, a great senator from South Carolina. He came in with this incredible idea for opportunity zones. It's one of the most successful programs. People don't talk about it. Tremendous investment is being made. Biggest beneficiary, the black and Hispanic communities, and then historically black colleges and universities. After 3 years of coming to the office, I love some of those guys. They were great. They came into the office and they said, I said, what are you doing? After 3 years, I said, why do you keep coming back? Because we have no funding. I said, you don't have to come back every year. We have to come back because President Obama would never give them long-term funding, and I did. 10-year, long-term funding, and I gave them more money than they asked for because they said, I think you need more. And I said, the only bad part about this is I may never see you again because I got very friendly with them, and they like me and I like them. But I saved it. Colleges and universities.
Okay, and we're going to talk about both of your records, but your response to that, Vice
My
Chair.
response to that is I never ever said what he accused me of saying. The fact of the matter is, in 2000, though, after the crime bill had been in the law for a while, this is a guy who said the problem with the crime bill, there's not enough people in jail. There's not enough people in jail. And go on my website, get the quote, the date when he said it. Not enough people. He talked about marauding gangs, young gangs, and the people who are going to maraud our cities. This is a guy who in the Central Park five innocent black kids, he continued to push for making sure that they got the death penalty. None of them were guilty of the crimes that were suggested. Look, and talk about granted, he did in fact let 20 people, he commuted 20 people sentences. We commuted over 1,000 people sentences. Over 1,000. The very law he's talking about is a law that in fact initiated by Barack Obama. And secondly, we're in a situation here where the federal prison system was reduced by 38,000 people under our administration. And one of these things we should be doing, there should be no minimum mandatories in the law. That's why I'm offering $20 billion to states to change their state laws to eliminate minimum mandatories and set up drug courts. No one should be going to jail because they have a drug problem. They should be going to rehabilitation, not to jail. We should fundamentally change the system, and that's what I'm going to do.
But why didn't he do it 4 years ago? Why didn't you do that 4 years ago, even less than that? Why didn't you? You were vice president. You keep talking about all these things you're going to do and you're going to do this. But you were there just a short time ago, and you guys did nothing.
We did.
You know, Joe, I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama, because you did a poor job. If I thought you did
Oh, I know.
would
So
never run.
You
on
ran
Joe's
because
face,
a black man was president.
I'm looking at you now, you're a
on
politician.
Joe's
I ran
face,
because of you.
you know
Vice
what the
President Biden,
thought
your response
was.
to that, and then I do have some-
And I wanted him to say it, but I'm glad he didn't. You won because I didn't run. Because I didn't run.
You know who he is.
The only reason you won is because I wasn't that opposing candidate.
Telling the truth.
If I would have been that opposing candidate, you would have lost.
I am the character of the country is on the ballot. Our character is on the ballot. Look at us closely.
Let me ask some follow-up.
Excuse me.
Please respond,
If
and then we're
this
going to have
stuff
follow-up
is
questions.
true about Russia, Ukraine, China, other countries, Iraq, if this is true, then he's a corrupt politician.
All right.
So don't give me the stuff about how you're this innocent baby. Joe, they're calling you a corrupt politician.
Nobody.
President Trump, I want to stay on the issue of race. We're talking
Get
about
a
the issue.
laptop from hell.
President Trump,
Nobody.
Mute his mic.
do want to stay on the issue of race. President Trump,
I
you've
have to
just
respond to that.
Please,
Because look,
very
there
quickly.
are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plan. They have said that this has all the five former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
And
You
that's
got it.
exactly what.
Is this
That's
where you're
exactly what.
This is
so,
where he's going. The laptop is Russia.
Mute them.
The
I wanna stay on
laptop,
the issue of race,
You
okay?
have to be kidding. Here we go again with Russia.
they didn't give it to anyone who insisted on doing a check on it, which kind of puts into question its authenticity.
Millions of your supporters. You've said that black professional athletes exercising their First Amendment rights should be fired. What do you say to Americans who say that kind of language from a president is contributing to a climate of hate and racial strife?
Well, you have to understand, the first time I ever heard of Black Lives Matter, they were chanting pigs in a blanket, talking about police. Pigs, talking about our police. Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. I said, that's a horrible thing. And they were marching down the street. And that was my first glimpse of Black Lives Matter. I thought it was a terrible thing. As far as my relationships with all people, I think I have great relationships with all people. I am the least racist person in this room.
What do you say to Americans who are concerned by that rhetoric?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to say. I got criminal
Oh my
justice
God.
reform done in prison.
He said that with a straight
He's
face.
like, see, you see what I did for the blacks? I did it here. I did it here. What do you mean I'm racist? Come on. Come on. Me, racist, huh? Huh? How many black friends do you? I don't know. Come on.
I am the least racist person. I can't even say
I love
the audience
tacos.
because it's so dark.
I eat nachos, huh?
Racist person in this room.
Okay,
I like fried chicken and watermelon.
And then I have a follow-up question for you.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history. He pours fuel on every single racist fire. Every single one. He started off his campaign coming down the escalator saying he's going to get rid of those Mexican rapists. He's banned Muslims because they're Muslims. He has moved around and made everything worse across the board. He says about the poor boys. Last time we were on stage here, he said,
The poor boys.
Stand down,
Yeah, it was the Proud Boys.
Stand ready. Come on. This guy is a dog whistle about as big as a foghorn.
President Trump, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I have a
No,
follow-up.
you made a reference to Abraham Lincoln. Where did that come in?
You just said you're the least.
No. I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community. And I'm saying
You
I'm
have-
Abraham Lincoln. I said
you-
not since Abraham Lincoln.
No, you
No.
said, and I quote,
Now,
no president has done more for black people than Donald Trump, except maybe Abraham Lincoln. That's exactly what you said.
mostly in jail.
All right,
And you know what?
let me
They
ask
remember
Vice
it because
President
if you look
Biden
at what's happening with the voting right now,
Let me ask
they
Vice
remember
President
that
Biden
you treated them
about-
very, very badly. Just take a look at what's happening out
God
there.
is fucking
President Biden,
Mike.
Give you a chance to respond within this context. Crime bills that you supported in the 80s and 90s contributed to the incarceration of tens of thousands of young black men who have small amounts of drugs in their possession. They are sons, they are brothers, they're fathers, they're uncles, whose families are still to this day, some of them suffering the consequences. So speak to those families. Why should they vote for you?
One of the things is that in the 80s, we passed 100%, all 100 senators voted for it, a bill on drugs and how to deal with drugs. It was a mistake. I've been trying to change the since then, particularly the portion on
Atta
cocaine.
boy.
That's why I've been arguing that, in fact, we should not send anyone to jail for a pure drug offense.
Admit
They
it.
should be going
Admit
into
it was a
treatment
mistake.
across the board. That's
Say
why
how
I
you're
should
gonna
spend
fix
money.
it.
That's why I set up drug courts, which were never funded by
Me
Republican
and
friends.
99
They
other
should
senators
not be
fucked
going
up.
to jail
Sorry.
for a drug or an alcohol problem. They should be going into
What
treatment.
you doing?
Treatment.
Looking for your
That's
phone?
what we've been trying to do. That's what I'm going to get done because I think the American people have now seen that, in fact, it was a mistake to pass those laws related to drug, but they were not in the crime bill.
But why didn't he get it done? See, it's all talk, no action with these politicians. Why didn't he get it
Dude, you're a
done?
fucking
That's what I'm
politician.
gonna do when I become president. You were
Wh- when
vice
I-
president along with Obama as your president, your leader, for 8 years. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years to get it done. Now you're saying you're going to get it done because you're all talk and no action, Jim.
We got a lot of it done. We released 38,000. We got 38,000 prisoners left from.
You got nothing done.
38,000 prisoners were released from federal prison. There were over 1,000 people who were given clemency. In fact, we're the ones who put in the legislation saying we could look at pattern and practice of police departments and what they were doing, how they were conducting themselves. I could go on, but we began the process. We lost an election. That's why I'm running to win back that election and change his terrible policy.
I just asked one question. Why didn't you do it in the 8 years, a short time ago? Why
He's
didn't
just
you
gonna
do it?
keep
Something
asking
like
that, even though he just
Because
answered the
You
question.
put tens of thousands of mostly black young men in prison. Now you're saying you're gonna
Dude, you're the one screaming law and order every time somebody says something negative about the police because
All
they're
right, Vice
they're
President Biden, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
The
unduly
Republican Congress.
harder on black people.
That's the answer.
Well, you
Okay.
gotta talk them into it, Joe.
All right.
You gotta talk them into it.
Yeah, how's that?
Next section.
Like I did
Hi.
with criminal justice reform. I had to talk
How's it
Democrats
going?
into it.
Gentlemen, we're running out of time, so we got to get get on to climate change, please. You both have very
Climate
different
change.
visions on climate change. President Trump, you say that environmental regulations have hurt jobs in the energy sector. Vice President Biden, you have said you see addressing climate change as an opportunity to create new jobs. For each of you, how would you both combat climate change and support job growth at the same time? Starting with you, President Trump, you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So we have the Trillion Trees program. We have so many different programs.
We
I
have
do
so
love
many
the
different
environment, but
programs
what I want
because
is the
we're gonna
cleanest,
just
crystal clear water, the cleanest
we're just
air.
gonna
We have
keep
the best, lowest number
putting
in
trees
carbon emissions, which
and
is a big
saying
standard
trees
that I notice Obama
and
goes
carbon
with all
emission.
the time. Not Joe. I haven't heard Joe use the term because I'm not sure he knows what it represents or means, but I have heard Obama use it. And we have the best carbon emission numbers that we've had in 35 years under this administration. We are working so well with industry, but here's what we can't do. Look at China, how filthy it is. Look at Russia. Look at India. It's filthy. The air is filthy. The Paris Accord, I took us out because we were going to have to spend trillions of dollars, and we
It
were treated
was
very
a
unfairly. When they
performative
put us in there, they did us a great
agreement.
disservice. They were going to take away our businesses.
That's all it was.
I will not
It was
sacrifice
just a handshake
tens of
agreement that you were
millions of
going to do
jobs,
better.
thousands and
There
thousands
there
of
weren't any
companies because of the
penalties
Paris
or
Accord.
anything.
It was so unfair.
It was literally
China doesn't
just
kick in
for
until
show.
2030. Russia goes back to a low standard, and we
You didn't
kicked in
have
right
to do
away.
anything.
It would've
You
been-
wouldn't
it
have
would've
to
been-
pay
it would've
anything.
destroyed our businesses. So,
Just do it.
you ready? We have done an incredible job environmentally. We have the cleanest air, the cleanest water, and the best carbon emission standards that we've seen in many, many years.
Vice President
And we
Biden.
haven't destroyed our industries.
Vice President Biden, 2 minutes to you uninterrupted.
Climate change, climate warming, global warming is an existential threat to humanity. We have a moral obligation to deal with it. And we're told by all the leading scientists in the world, we don't have much time. We're going to pass the point of no return within the next 8 to 10 years. 4 more years of this man eliminating all the regulations that were put in by us to clean up the climate, to limit the limit of emissions will put us in a position where we're going to be in real trouble. Here's where we have a great opportunity. I was able to get both all the environmental organizations as well as labor, the people worried about jobs, to support my climate plan. Because what it does, it will create millions of new good-paying jobs. We're going to invest in, for example, 50,000 charging stations on our highways so that we can own the electric car
He
market in the
keeps
future. In the meantime,
mixing
China is
50,000
doing
and
that.
500,000.
Position
He
where
trying.
to see to it
He is
that
trying.
We're going to take 4 million existing buildings and 2 million existing homes and retrofit them so they don't leak as much energy, saving hundreds of millions of barrels of oil in the process and creating significant number of jobs. And by the way, the whole
Somebody
idea
just
of what
tweeted,
this is
I'm in
about
Georgia, but I swear when he called New York my beautiful city, I heard New York scream, fuck you!
That's what's happening. And what right now, by the way, Wall Street firms indicated that my plan will in fact create 18.6 million jobs, 7 million more than his. This is from Wall Street. And I'll create $1 trillion more in economic growth than his proposal does. Not on climate, just on the economy.
Well, President Trump, you're
They came out and said very strongly, $6,500 will be taken away from families under his plan, that his plan is an economic disaster.
What?
If you look at what he wants to do, if you look at his plan, his
Nothing to do with
environmental
climate.
plan, you know who developed it? AOC plus 3. They know nothing about the climate. I
They
mean,
know
she's got
more
a
about
good line of
climate
stuff,
than
but
you
she
do,
knows
babe.
Nothing about the climate, and they're all hopping through hoops for AOC plus 3. Look, their real plan cost $100 trillion. If we had the best year in the history of our country for 100 years, we would not even come close to a number like that. When he says buildings, they want to take buildings down because they want to make bigger windows into smaller windows. As far as they're concerned,
What?
if you had no window, it would be a lovely thing. This is the craziest plan.
Where is he
anybody's
getting
ever
this
seen.
from?
And this wasn't
I
done
don't
by
understand.
Smart people. This wasn't done
And there are
by
people that are
anybody.
listening to this
Frankly, I don't
thinking
even
it's
know how to be good
gospel.
politically. They wanna
Like they are
spend
taking this as
$100
absolute
trillion.
fact.
That's their real number. He's trying
And
to save
it's
us
just
there.
ramblings of a
$100
madman.
trillion. They want to knock down buildings and build new buildings with little, tiny, small windows. I mean, and many other
What are you
things. And many other
talking
things.
about?
We have the Vice President
It
respond,
is
and we're running out of time, and we have a lot more
will
questions to
destroy
get
our
to.
country.
So let's hear from the Vice
What are you
President. I have a number more
I
questions.
don't know where he comes from. I don't know where he comes up with these numbers.
Queens.
$100 trillion.
No, don't
Give
put that
me
on
a
Queens.
break. This plan
Yeah,
was,
don't
this
do
is
that.
plan is endorsed by every major environmental group and every labor group. Labor, because they know the future lies. The future lies in us being able to breathe, and they know they're good jobs and getting us
Come on,
there.
lefties,
And
I'm
by
working
way,
with the unions.
fastest growing industry in America is the electric, solar energy and wind. He thinks wind causes cancer. Windmills. It's the fastest growing job.
What?
And they pay.
He did. When he first started talking about solar energy, windmills give you cancer.
We can grow and we can be cleaner.
What do
if
you
we
do
go
with solar
the
when
right
there's
process.
shade?
President Trump,
Excuse me.
please
We are
respond, and then I have some
we are
follow-ups.
energy independent for the first time. We don't need all of these countries that we had to fight war over because we needed their energy. We are energy independent. I know more about wind than you do. It's extremely expensive.
Because you blow a lot of hot wind.
Birds. It's very intermittent.
It kills all the
And
birds.
they happen to make the windmills in both Germany and China. And the fumes coming up.
It kills all the birds.
The fumes
Everybody stop making solar and
is more than anything that we're
and wind turbines.
natural gas, which
They
is
kill all the
the
birds.
thing.
Find me
Wind
something
turbines
that said
kill
that.
all the birds,
But
huh?
solar doesn't quite have it yet. It's
What
not
the
powerful
fuck?
yet to really run our big, beautiful factories that we
He said
Apple's
wind-
corporate headquarters would beg to differ with you, sir.
pipe dream. But you know what we'll do?
We have an example of it, like in real time now.
two
Get
examples of it.
oil industry. You want
Because
what about fracking?
Disney World is solar.
Yeah.
Vice President Biden to respond.
Never said
Walt Disney World is
fracking.
they have an entire solar farm.
Show the tape. Put it on your website.
Put it on.
Put it on the website. The fact of the matter is,
Show
he's
the list.
flat lying.
Would you rule out banning fracking?
I do rule out banning fracking because the answer we need
That's just
need
you
other industries
bowing
transition
to
get to ultimately a complete zero emissions by 2025. What I will do with fracking over time is make sure that we can capture the emissions from the fracking, capture the emissions from gas. We can do that, and we can do that by investing money and doing it. But it's a transition to that.
I have one
But
more
how are you
question
gonna
in
keep
this
it
part.
from
He was against fracking. He said it.
fucking
I will show that to you tomorrow.
polluting?
I am against fracking. Until he got the nomination, went to Pennsylvania, then he said, but you know what, Pennsylvania? He'll be against it very soon because his party is totally against it.
Fracking on federal land, I said. No fracking
You said
and or oil on
you said
federal
Let
land.
me ask this
I
final
did.
question in this section, and then I want to move on to our final section. President Trump, people of color are much more likely to live near oil refineries and chemical plants. In Texas, there are families who worry the plants near them are making them sick. Your administration has rolled back regulations on these kinds of facilities. Why should these families give you another 4 years in office?
The families that we're talking about are employed heavily and they're making a lot of money, more money than they've ever made. If you look at the kind of numbers that we produce
No.
for Hispanic, for Black, for Asian, it's 9 times greater the percentage gain than it was under, in 3 years, than it was under 8 years of the 2 of them, to put it nicely. 9 times more. Now,
He wanted to say a
somebody
bad
I
word.
have not heard the numbers or the statistics that you're saying, but they're making a tremendous amount of money economically. We saved it, and I saved it again a number of months ago when oil was crashing because of the pandemic.
Okay.
We saved it. We got, say what you want about relationship, we got Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Russia to cut back, way back. We saved our oil industry, and now it's very vibrant again.
All
And
right.
everybody has very inexpensive gasoline. Remember
Vice
that.
President Biden, your response, and then
It's
we're gonna have
not,
a final
though.
question for both of you.
It was for like
People live
2
on what they call fence
weeks
lines. He doesn't understand this.
when Russia
They
refused
live
to
near
pull back how
chemical
much
plants that, in fact,
oil they
chemical
were
plants and oil plants and refineries that
giving.
pollute. I used to live near that when I was growing
But
up in
it's
Conroe,
right back
Delaware.
up to where it
And
was.
all the more oil refineries in Marcus Hook and the Delaware River than there is any place, including in Houston at the time. When my mom get in the car when there was first frost to drive me to school, turning the windshield over, there'd be oil slick in the window. That's why so many people in my state were dying and getting cancer. The fact is, those frontline communities, it doesn't matter what you're paying them, it matters how you keep them safe. What do you do? And you impose restrictions on the pollutants coming out of those fence line communities.
Okay, I have one final
Would you
question.
close down the oil
It
industry?
falls.
Or would you close
It
down the
falls.
oil
By the way, I
industry?
would transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I would
that's a big
transition.
statement.
It is a big statement,
That's a
because
big statement.
I would stop,
Why would you do that?
because the oil industry pollutes significantly.
I see.
Here's the deal, but you
That's a
can't
big
do that.
statement.
Well, if you let me finish the statement, because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time, and I stopped giving to the oil.
Oh, God, he's about to play that one.
Yep.
You won't give federal
He's going to
subsidies
try to
the-
say he's
the
trying to
gas
take away your
associated
jobs,
to solar,
even though
and
he's
Yeah.
clearly saying that he's wanting to
We
transition
actually
those
do have to
jobs
solar and wind.
We have
That's
one
away
final
from
biggest
oil
statement
to
in terms of
renewable.
business. That's the
But
biggest
now it's
statement.
going to be,
Because
he's trying to destroy the oil industry.
the oil industry. Will you remember that, Texas? Will you
Okay.
remember that?
I want to know why he's saying
Vice
industry
President,
like
I'm
that.
gonna give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I have
Is
to
he
get to the
having
final
mini
question.
strokes or something?
No,
It takes everything
what
out of
pisses
context.
me
The
off
point is, look, we have
is that
to
he's
go
going to
forward
play that one
in
clip.
net
I
zero
know.
emissions. The first place to do that.
Like, that's why he can't think right now, is that he just heard that one clip in his head,
Yep.
and he's like, oh, cut that.
No, we're finished with
Is
this.
he
We have
going to
to
get
move on
China?
to our final
I know that.
question. We have
Well, no,
one
I was just, he keeps saying industry as industry.
All right, this is about
Industry.
leadership, gentlemen. And this first question does go to you, President Trump. Imagine this is your inauguration day. What will you say in your address to Americans who did not vote for you? You'll each have 1 minute, starting with you, Mr.
We have to make a country totally successful as it was prior to the plague coming in from China. Now we're rebuilding it and we're doing record numbers, 11.4 million jobs in a short period of time, etc. But I will tell you, go back. Before the plague came in, just before, I was getting calls from people that were not normally people that would call me.
So hold on a
They wanted to
second.
get together.
It's
We had
only the
black,
flu, but now it's a plague.
history of our country, Hispanic, women, Asian, people with
It's
diplomas,
not-
no diplomas,
it's
MIT
as bad
graduates,
as the
all over
flu,
United
and that's
States, everybody
it.
had the best numbers. And you know what? The
But
other
it's a
side
plague
wanted
from
to get
China.
together. They wanted to unify. Success is going to bring us together. We are on the road to success, but I'm cutting taxes, and he wants to raise everybody's taxes, and he wants to put new regulations on everything. He will kill it. If he gets in, you will have a depression the likes of which you've never seen. Your 401ks will go to hell, and it'll be a very, very sad day for this country.
All right. Vice President Biden, same question to you. What will you say during your inaugural address to Americans who did not vote for you?
I will say, I'm the American president. I represent all of you, whether you voted for me or against me. And I'm going to make sure that you're represented. I'm going to give you hope. We're going to move. We're going to choose science over fiction. We're going to choose hope over fear. We're going to choose to move forward because there are enormous opportunities to make things better. We can grow this economy. We can deal with the systemic racism. And at the same time, we can make sure that our economy is being run and moved and motivated by clean energy, creating millions of new jobs. And that's the fact. That's what we're going to do. And I'm going to say, as I said at the beginning, what is on the ballot here is the character of this country. Decency, honor, respect, treating people with dignity, making sure that everyone has an even chance. And I'm going to make sure you get that. You haven't been getting it the last 4 years.
All right. I want to thank you both for a very robust hour and a half, a fantastic debate. Really appreciate it. President Trump, former Vice President Joe Biden, thank you to Belmont University for hosting us tonight. And most importantly, thank you to those watching tonight. Election Day is November 3rd. Don't forget to vote. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
So that actually was a debate. It was still trash.
Yeah.
I like the fact that at least Biden was able to talk about policy this time. what bothers me more than anything else about President Donald Trump, did you hear one thing about policy
Nope.
in his talking point?
All it was a bunch of exactly that. It was just a bunch of talking points.
I mean, there was some of the mention of what he did when it came to healthcare, prison reform and stuff. Granted, I'd rather have to go back and fact check that to make sure that he wasn't just, being trash.
Yeah.
But biggest thing at the end of this, guys, please go vote. Go make sure that you let your voices be heard. Go to vote.org. They have a whole bunch of different resources. If you don't know where your polling places are, it is so important, not only just for the top of the ballot, which is what's getting all the publicity, but the bottom of the ballot too. Make sure you vote for your governors and elected state officials, so that
City
way,
council members.
exactly. So that way, when this is all done, I don't want to hear anybody who I
Sheriffs.
know. Yeah, anybody who I know or who watches this podcast, I don't want to hear I didn't vote because I don't care. Because you have to care about this. You have to see where this is important for your life. Anything else, Mrs. Carpenter?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, as always, please like, share, subscribe. It's a long one, so if you don't want to watch the whole thing, I completely understand. We'll be back with a new, normal episode of The Kids Are Gone in 2 weeks. Thank you very much. You guys have a good night.
We love you.
Love you.